Welcome to Careers in Accounting. Today, we're pleased to have Kristin Guehlstorf. Kristin is a PwC partner in the healthcare consulting practice. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
I'm excited to be here.
Okay, maybe to get started, can you talk a little bit about what got your interest in accounting and what led you into the profession?
Sure. So my mother was an accountant while I was growing up, and I did help her, of course, on the weekends. My father owned his own business, so we did bank reconciliations and stuff like that from when I was young. And then in high school, I became more interested in athletics. And so I was actually on the fence between being an athletic trainer or being an accountant, very unusual, divergent paths. And I really had to decide like the night before graduation because they required us to announce what our future aspirations were. And I didn't want to be undecided as a valedictorian. So I chose accounting, and I'm very grateful for that path. I've enjoyed it. I think I got the right fit.
Okay, and then you went straight into public accounting upon graduation?
I did. Upon graduation, I graduated from Marquette University in Milwaukee, and I started with PW at the time. Price Waterhouse was a part of the Big Eight, so one of the public accounting firms, and that is now the Big Four.
Okay, and so you're one of the senior partners in the healthcare practice. And you do consulting work. So a lot of people may think of accounting firms as audit and tax, but consulting is one of the more dynamic and growing parts of the practice. So can you talk a little bit about consulting in an accounting firm?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I did start on the accounting side, the financial accounting side. I was in that role for about half my career, actually about 17 years. I've been at the firm 33. And then the rest of my career, I've been on the consulting side. And I probably had about 4 different careers almost during my time at PwC. I loved starting in accounting. I felt like that was a really great foundation and doing the financial audit work. But I then became like very interested in taking a consulting path, and mine particularly led through healthcare. So I started doing healthcare work that was a combination of serving consulting clients and audit clients, and eventually merged completely over to doing all work for consulting clients. You leverage a lot of the same skills. It's all about helping clients solve problems, and I've always enjoyed being actively involved in solving problems. The number of problems and the diversity of those, I think, is a little bit different on the consulting side. So that foundation in accounting was really important for me, I think, to be successful on the consulting side.
So is that your advice to a young person that might be interested in accounting and maybe ultimately going into consulting, but to start in one of the more traditional paths?
I mean, it is. I think it was a great way to start. And I think it's important to get your CPA if you're taking the accounting path, which I highly recommend, and then get your CPA and I think get that under your belt and deliver those services. Now, I wouldn't say you'd have to stay for 17 years. I did, and that worked perfectly for me. But I know a lot of people that did the audit work or even some tax work and did that for 3, 5, 7 years and then made a move over to consulting. And it's worked out really well for them as well.
Okay. And so I understand you're a global relationship partner for some large accounts of the firm. So can you talk a little bit about what you do in that role and kind of what that entails?
Yeah, I think it's one of the best roles I've ever had and one of the best roles at the firm. So my responsibility is to my client. So I am building relationships with the leadership team of the organization, and it's really mostly about listening. I think it's important to go into the discussion with a point of view and being aware of what's going on in their industry and with their business. But then really, what is it that they're struggling with the most? What things are they concerned about? What questions do they have? I usually leave those meetings with a little bit of a homework assignment. And then I'm really around identifying the best resources at the firm. And it's so cool to have a bench that we have at PwC. I mean, we have so many people that come from so many different walks of life and backgrounds and levels of experience that it's really like a matching process. I'm matching the client's issues and questions and needs with somebody at the firm that's done that before, brings an interesting perspective to it. And then we get that started. And when the projects are ongoing, then I'm checking in regularly. Is the client getting what they need? Is the team feeling like they're getting, fulfilled in the opportunities that they're looking for to deliver the services? Are there any issues or risks to the project and that type of thing? So it's a super exciting role, and I get to work with so many different people on a daily basis. No day is the same.
Yeah, interesting. So, and I think that's one of the problems with the profession is the stereotypes that maybe it's a little redundant, maybe it's your parents' or grandparents' profession, and a little bit too repetitive for today's professional. But can you just talk about that? Because it sounds like you're dealing with whatever your client's dealing with, and you have no idea what that's going to be like in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I would say even in the early stages of my career, which I would say you're more likely maybe to feel like you're doing some redundant work, there were still very few days that were the same. The learning curve is very steep, and that's partly why I went into public accounting is I actually really liked college. I liked school. I liked learning and continuing to
Hmm.
develop. And I felt like if I went into public accounting, I could keep growing and learning, doing different things. See, I didn't know what industry interested me when I graduated college. I really wasn't sure. You can work in a lot of different industries when you first start. You can work on different types of
Yep.
clients, sizes. And then getting that experience continued to refine my thinking of where I would have the most impact and have the most interest. So yeah, it is a lot of fast paced and changing environment. I mean, one of the stories that I shared with the classes we spoke to today that I do like, it was a pivotal moment in my career. At about the 5.5 year mark, we had new manager training. And there was a CFO there from a large company. And he came in and spoke about if he were to hire somebody into his accounting department at his company, he would look at a PwC person that, well, it was PW at the time, but a PW person that had been at PW for 5 years and compare that to a person that had been at the company for 11 years. And he would view those to be similarly skilled for that open opportunity. And it dawned on me that I'm really getting like 11 years worth of
Hmm.
experience in 5 years. And that comes from seeing so many different clients. You see the things that go well, you learn from those. You see the things that don't go well, you learn from those. So yeah, I could go on forever about how not redundant every single
Yeah.
day is, but I agree with you. That is a stereotype that we sometimes hear. It's just not close to reality at all. So
Yeah. Good. And I know that can be unnerving for some people is that you don't know exactly what you're going to be doing in 3 months or 6 months. But I learned that was exciting at a certain point, that you didn't know exactly what issue they were going to be dealing with, what country, and those types of things. And so it's kind of exciting to keep it fresh.
it is.
I
I
think.
think so too. I think you keep learning. And in the early years, if you're in public accounting on the financial audit side, there is a cyclical nature to what we do, right? You know when the K and the Qs are, you know when they're going to have earnings releases. But the problems and the environment, it's super dynamic. So even there where you might have a little bit of a timeline and you understand what your year might look
Hmm.
like high level, day to day is still very different, I think, every day.
Yeah. So one of the points you touched upon, is about the opportunities that comes your way as a young professional in public accounting. So I'm interested in that because I've always thought of public accounting as being a well-worn path. You graduate from college, they can get you started in your business career, and you get to touch a lot of different things, as you were mentioning, industries, topics, subject matters. But there are opportunities that come within the firm and outside the firm. Can you talk a little bit about maybe what you've seen in your career?
Yeah, sure. So definitely within the firm, I mentioned I've been actually in 3 different offices and I've had probably 4 different careers during my time at the firm. And some of those opportunities I sought out, and you have the ability just to raise your hand and say, I'm interested in doing something different. And people, if you're high performing, they want you to stay. They want to make that work for you. They want to give you that additional opportunity to grow and move to the next thing. So that's been encouraged and supported. But you also get reach out from a lot of executive recruiters and companies, people you work with, clients you work with, who are interested in you coming to work for them. A lot of organizations really appreciate the way that the public accounting firms, like you said, that well-worn path, they really appreciate the training ground, so
Hmm.
to speak, and the diverse experience so that when they hire somebody that's come from that, they do bring a bit of an outside in perspective. They've seen things at other companies. And so a lot of organizations recruit heavily. They prefer to get people that have been in public accounting, maybe even than just people right out of school, where they have to do all that training and so forth. So, yeah, there are a lot of opportunities. And I think, and definitely I see people take some of those and do extremely well. We
Hmm.
have clients who you look and say they used to be at the firm and now they're, a CFO of a Fortune
Yeah.
50 company, right? So you see that all the time. But there are certain points in that career journey that are probably better than others as far as leaving. I would highly encourage people to stay at least 3 years, right? Get that CPA
Hmm.
and the practical experience under their belt, and then continue to see where it takes them. And your compensation curve actually works very similarly to the learning curve. It's a pretty steep curve. So even though after 2 years you might get an offer to move somewhere that would be a 10% raise, the reality is within another year or two, you'll already have far surpassed what you would be able to be paid in industry in a lot of cases. Obviously, it's not always the case, but generally.
Yes. Interesting. So Kristen and I work together at PwC. So I haven't talked to you about this in the past, so I'm going to hit you this cold, but interested in your take on this. I always thought of my practice in the firm as being very entrepreneurial, that I was running my business, my little niche and my group, and I was in charge of that. And I could go out and chase this work or chase that work or sell this particular project to my existing clients, and we could try to develop that into a nice rewarding project for everyone. But how do you feel about your role in the firm? Because I took great comfort in that. It was exciting to me, but I had the protection of the firm because you had mentioned about all the experts that you have at a touch of the dial for you. And I found that very comforting. There's always somebody who knows the answer or has done that project before that you can find, and you're bringing that resource to your client's needs. But can you talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial aspect?
Yeah, no, that's such a great perspective. It really is. I hadn't thought of it that way before, but kind of the best of both worlds because you have a lot of autonomy to take the direction, take meetings, who you're going to spend your time with, how you're going to focus that time. And like I said, so much of it is client driven. The firm they wouldn't be successful to dictate all of that. Like if I had to go meet with every client on a particular topic, that would be, that'd be a big blind spot for us as a firm. So it's all about listening to your client. As a result of that, the paths are going to be different and you have the opportunity to drive that very much so. So yeah, I feel like it is very entrepreneurial, and we have such a strong partnership culture that you do form relationships with partners where you appreciate bringing them in and they appreciate being brought in. And so it gives them the opportunity to take that conversation where they see and what they've seen in the industry and with other clients, but it gives you the opportunity to continue to learn about what they do, which makes you even more prepared to introduce them the next time. So there's just a lot of knowledge transfer that happens normally day to day.
Yeah, my experience was the silos don't really exist. It's what's best for that particular engagement. What's going to get to the right answer and bring that to bear to that
And our
issue.
partners are incentivized and rewarded for doing that. So you're rewarded for bringing other partners in. It's never can be the about me show. That just wouldn't work for your client or for you personally.
So the profession is having trouble getting younger people attracted to it. So I'd be interested in your perspective on that. I see that here on campus, but I also look at it as the positive, is that the layer of work that's there, the complexity is not going to change across all the different disciplines that the firms are dealing with. And there's a generation that's about ready to exit the profession. And so where is that next leadership coming from? But can you talk a little bit about what opportunities does that lend to a young person?
Yeah, I mean, we've even used the phrase, right, the war on talent. Like that's such an aggressive phrase, but the reality is that the talent and resources, accounting resources are in high demand. They're in high demand in public accounting. People recruit between firms. They're in high demand in industry, people particularly that have had that accounting background and then go to work at a public accounting firm. And I think as a result of that, we are very focused on hiring and retention, right? So we try to identify people early in their college careers. And then when they come to the firm, we're all about retention and therefore the high increases in comp, the bonus programs. When the firm does well, they share in the rewards of that. Opportunities for travel, for international, for transfers. We have people that start in one practice and they want to do something different. We make all of those things work as often as we can because we want to retain people. So I think when, it's back to your econ class, it's like supply and demand, right? So if the demand is tight, if the supply is tight, there's a high demand for those resources and you're compensated accordingly and you're valued accordingly.
Yeah. So let's talk about starting salaries because the accounting, it's led by accountants. So I tell people they're going to be drug kicking and screaming before they raise starting salaries. But my understanding is that is being addressed in the market as part of this talent shortfall. But until we get there, accounting starting salaries may be a little bit lower than other business-related professions. Can you talk a little bit about the near term? So maybe a 3 to 5 year salary, maybe even in your career, don't need numbers, but just directionally what that looks like or what you've seen in your team and how the highly rated individuals progress in the near term in their careers.
Yeah. I mean, there's an ongoing, you're promoted very frequently and you're also given typically double-digit raises. Our highest performing people get double-digit raises and significant bonuses in years the firm does well, which has thankfully been quite a few years. I mean, we're typically giving out really nice bonuses. We also have a milestone program that's specifically focused on that retention of folks. So as they hit different milestones, we offer different retreats. We have a really sizable bonus when people finish their first year as manager. We understand that's a year where you're moving into a management role. It can be challenging and rewarding. And so we make sure to give people those types of opportunities. So yeah, I mean, it's very lucrative. And then of course, all the way to the partnership level. I mean, it's a really good income, and it's designed to make you successful and reward you for what you do.
Yep. Great. Can we talk a little bit about AI? I think there might be a perception that accounting is in the crosshairs of AI, and that a lot of things will be taken over by machines. Again, maybe from the stereotype of it's redundant and those types of things, and therefore it's going to be automated. Can you talk a little bit about how you view AI and what you see your firm doing?
Yeah. So obviously AI is transforming the world, right? Regardless of what profession you're in, you'll probably be impacted at some level by AI. What I would say, though, is it's kind of fun to bust through two myths in the same sentence, right? But the fact of the matter is, like, the redundant work that may need to be done at some point, we have been automating that for years, right? So, back when I started and we didn't have personal computers yet, you might spend time footing with an 8 key of that. That's long gone,
Yep.
right? That just doesn't happen. All of the stuff like that has been very highly automated already. But I think the value that we bring to clients is the insight. We call it the so what sometimes, right? So the tools, AI and other automations are great, and we use them all the time, not to replace us, but to accelerate the insight that we bring, right? So we get the information, but then you still need the human brain to go through and digest the information, compare it to the environment or culture at the client, compare it to other projects that you've seen that run the same type of outcomes are desired. How will that work for this organization? And then delivering the so what to a client in a concise format, right? Getting the key messages across and listening to them and tailoring the approach to what they need, right? A combination of your expertise with what they know they need. I don't see that ever being replaced by technology, honestly.
Yeah, that ability to take something that's very complicated, whatever field you're in, distill it down into something that's very concise and actionable by an executive is a skill that can't be outsourced.
No, it can't.
The other thing I would also add is creativity, just the imagination of the human brain to bring an idea to the table, innovative idea to a problem is something that just can't be automated as well. But
Well, and we use a phrase, Jeff, I'm sure you've heard of the soft stuff is the hard stuff. We sometimes say that. And that's what happens when you can run all the analysis and say this project will take exactly 12 weeks and this is what you're going to do in what order. But you have to think about the person you're working with. Change is hard. A lot of work we do is around transformation, solving problems. And a lot of that requires people to do something differently than the way they do it today, and changing ways of thinking and ways of working. And that requires humanity and it requires a person. And it's unpredictable and interesting. I mean, it's what makes it so fun, right?
Yep. Can we talk a little bit about work-life balance?
Sure.
And I know you have a family. You have other responsibilities besides what you do at the firm. Can you talk a little bit about how you deal with the day-to-day responsibilities and the push and pull in your life?
Yeah, sure. So yes, I'm a mother. I have 4 children ranging from 15 to 24 years old. And I had all of them while I was working at PwC. I'm actually also on a couple of outside boards, and I have a passion for those things that I do. I've also always said I wish there were 48 hours in a day, but so far I haven't been able to figure that one out. So, yeah, I mean, you very much have to be organized and efficient with your time. You have to live by your calendar a little bit. So you're constantly agreeing to prioritize the things that you need to get done. And I use my calendar to block those personal commitments as well. I've also found, like, since COVID, travel has reduced because people have realized, both our clients and our teams, that not everything has to be in person. Some things still do. We still travel. We still get face to face with our clients, but it isn't just assumed that every single week people are hopping on a plane to serve their clients. And so as a result of that, we work coast to coast because the team with the expertise, they might be based in California, they might be based in Boston. And so it requires us to just collaborate and determine what is the best format and the way in which we collaborate. And so we make those choices based on our personal and professional demands on our time and lives. So it requires a bit more communication, but I think it's more flexible than it's ever been as a result of that. You also don't have as much time on planes and in airports, right?
Yeah.
Where you're
More
less
productive.
able to be collaborative. So a lot of that has changed the way that we work. But yeah, and I was on a flex arrangement for a number of years when my kids were really small. Our firm offers a lot of benefits and creative ways of working that allow for that. I don't need to be on it today, and I wasn't always on it, but it was nice in the years that I did use it. So there's things like that as well.
And I think you would agree. You mentioned the pandemic. I think professionals learned a lot about the pandemic. One of the few good things of that, but the trust factor is what I experienced as well. Is that when somebody was working remotely, maybe it was a connotation that were they really working, whereas now it's part of the business, and you just trust each other as professionals that if we have a deadline, we're going to work to meet that deadline. How you get there is kind of for you to manage with your life responsibilities.
Exactly.
And I really think that helped. And you mentioned one other thing about kind of taking a broader view of the capacity in the system across the country. So like you have a project, you can staff that all over the country. And I think that helps young people as well, because it smooths out work schedules, and somebody might be really busy. You don't have to tap a St. Louis person to do that. You can
Absolutely.
get somebody anywhere and they can be productive on that account and that project.
Well, yeah, and it gives people exposure to working with
Yeah.
so many different people. I mean, that's one of the benefits of public accounting we don't often think about, right? But if you work in other, environments and industries, you typically report to a person, right? And you work for them. And now if you love working for that person, that's fantastic and it can be really great. But if you want the opportunity to learn about how you interact with people, I think it makes us better at delivering services to clients, because even internally, every project you're working with different people with different ways of working, different personalities, strengths and weaknesses. And you can kind of pick and choose and emulate behaviors that you see. And this in COVID, it actually increased that. It was already pretty high in a public accounting environment, but it increased it even more because now, our teams are coast to coast. And so you get to work with a lot of different people and you get exposure to new ways of thinking, which I think is just helpful.
Yeah, it's dangerous when you're working with one partner the whole time and you get used to their cadence, their way of doing things. Whereas I always equated it, if you had a new client, you walk into that conference room, you don't know how they do things. Are they highly technical? Are they not technical? Are they by the book? Do they like chit chat? That types of things. And so you get to practice that working with a lot of different people inside the firm in a kind of a protected area. Last topic, kind of related to that, but what are your thoughts on terms of just beyond pure technical skills for an accountant to hone at school? What other areas should they focus on to be ready for the profession?
Yeah, again, like counter to that myth, right? We don't have a green visor on and just sit and crunch numbers all the time. So as a matter of fact, we don't do any of that anymore. So I would say communication skills, listening skills, like both two-way communication, so that you're really listening to the other person and that you're able to collaborate. And what you will find at PwC is that the people that get hired are the best of the best. And I equate it for college students too. You've all had those group projects and you're that person probably that makes sure the project gets an A. Even if someone else doesn't get their slides done on time, you're out fixing them or you're, picking a meeting time that works for them. The people I work with at PwC were all the people who were making sure that it got, the project got an A. And so you also learn, like, when are you leading? When are you following and learning and listening? When are you collaborating? It's a very collaborative and teaming environment. And so I think all of those things are important skills to have. And I love the fact that the academic world has started to migrate to doing. I mean, there's a lot of group project work, I think, at most curriculums. Communication skills are emphasized. Those are important. And then analysis. So learn the technology, not to hide behind it and just like, here's a printout or here's a report or here's a dashboard. But how do you use it to your advantage to get to those insights that you can then deliver to your clients? So I think all of those teaming skills, communication skills are really important.
Yeah, and on that technology front, it's always easier for the younger folks to take the lead on that, and it gets you involved and gets you to be a kind of a go-to person on a particular project.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Those students coming out of college, I always tell them we're all smart in different ways. And that's a little bit my leadership style too, is you occasionally will see people who are very deferential, right? So they don't speak up and yet, they know the answer. Excuse me. They built the dashboard. They did the work. And so the ability to give people that voice, I learn from them every day. I mean, that's the other thing in public accounting, like you're a teacher and learner in every single day. And if that's an environment that you like, then that's a good place to be. And it's been something that energizes me. So
yeah, that's one thing I stress is that participation aspect, because you may have seen this as well. When you're in a conference room and there's a young staff person who doesn't participate, doesn't talk as much. And for right or wrong, maybe there's a perception that they don't have anything to say. There's no input. And I don't think that's the case. It's just they're not comfortable in that situation. And so I try to advise people, start practicing that. Do that in a safe environment. Do that in your classroom. Do it with your professor. Nothing bad is going to happen in that scenario. And you're going to do that your whole career. You're going to get better at it. But I want people to be a participant in the team setting. If not, the team gets smaller next time around because you risk not being included if you're not participating in those engagements.
Yeah. And when you're in the position, I tell people, even if you do an internship, your first year at the firm, somebody's already looking up to you. So you end up teaching right away. And so draw those people out, ask their opinion
Yeah.
if they aren't speaking up. And so I think as
That's
soon as
great
you're in the
advice.
position to help, start doing that and giving people those opportunities. But yeah, network, connect with your professors, connect, like take advantage of Jeff being here on campus, pick the brains of people like that to see what makes sense for you in your future career.
All great points. Really appreciate you taking the time and spending a
It's
few minutes with
wonderful
us.
to be
Thank you.
with you. Thank you.